the ancient world, a tapestry woven with myth, war, and extraordinary civilizations. Between Greece and Rome lies the Hellenistic period, when Greek culture, like spilled wine, spread across Alexander's empire. None shone brighter than Alexandria, the jewel of the Hellenistic world. Here, in the Library of Alexandria, we meet Callimachus, poet, scholar, and literary revolutionary. Join us as we explore his world, his works, and his enduring legacy. Imagine Alexandria in its heyday. Sunlight glinting off white stone, the air alive with spices in the sea. In the heart of the city stood the Museum and the legendary library, a beacon for scholars. Here, Callimachus arrived, drawn by the city's energy and knowledge, finding inspiration among the scrolls and the echoes of literary giants. To understand Callimachus, we journey to Cyrene, his sunlit birthplace on the North African coast, steeped in Greek culture and history. Born into a prominent family, young Callimachus was drawn to learning, devouring scrolls in the shadow of Apollo's temple. His arrival in Alexandria, whether as student or invited scholar, marked a turning point, where, in the great library, he would shape the future of literature. The Hellenistic period, sandwiched between two titans of the ancient world, was a time of immense cultural and intellectual change. Alexander's conquests had shattered the old order, ushering in an era where Greek culture intermingled with those of Persia, Egypt, and beyond. This fusion of influences gave rise to new ways of thinking, new artistic expressions, and a renewed interest in exploring the world and its complexities. The literary landscape, too, underwent a profound transformation. The grand epic poetry of Homer, with its tales of heroes and gods, no longer resonated with the same force in this new world. The lived realities of Hellenistic life, with its diverse populations and complex political machinations, demanded a different kind of poetry. It craved verse that reflected the intricacies of the present, not just the glories of the past. This is where Callimachus enters the stage, not as a follower of tradition, but as a revolutionary. He recognized that the old forms, while still powerful, needed to evolve to speak to the sensibilities of his time. He dared to question the dominance of epic poetry, arguing instead for a more concise, refined, and intellectually rigorous approach to verse. Callimachus championed a new aesthetic, one that valued brevity, wit, and erudition above all else. He believed that true artistry lay in crafting verses that were not just beautiful, but also thought-provoking, layered with meaning and rich in allusion. His was a poetry of the mind, demanding an active and engaged reader. The story of Callimachus begins with the legacy of his ancestors, etched onto the sun-drenched stones of Cyrene. Founded by Greek colonists, Cyrene was a fusion of Greek and North African cultures. Callimachus belonged to the Batiad line, tracing back to King Battus. His grandfather, a general, defended Cyrene with valor. Yet Callimachus's destiny lay not in battle, but in the enduring power of verse. Born around 310 BC, he entered a world of promise and uncertainty. The circumstances that led Callimachus to leave the familiar shores of Cyrene for the bustling metropolis of Alexandria are lost to the sands of time. What we do know is that his arrival in this burgeoning center of Hellenistic culture was not merely a geographical shift, but a pivotal moment that would shape his destiny and leave an indelible mark on the course of Western literature. Imagine, if you will, the young Callimachus, perhaps in his late teens or early 20s, setting foot in Alexandria for the first time. The sights, the sounds, the very air itself must have been intoxicating. Gone were the familiar rhythms of Cyrene, replaced by the cacophony of a truly cosmopolitan city. Greeks, Egyptians, Persians, and people from even more far-flung corners of the known world rubbed shoulders in Alexandria's bustling marketplaces and sun-drenched squares. Yet, it was not just the city's cosmopolitan allure that drew Callimachus in. Alexandria, under the patronage of the Ptolemy dynasty, had become the intellectual epicenter of the Hellenistic world, and at its heart, both literally and figuratively, stood the Library of Alexandria. This wasn't just a repository of scrolls. It was a living, breathing testament to the pursuit of knowledge. Scholars, poets, and thinkers from across the Hellenistic world flocked to Alexandria, drawn by the promise of access to the library's unparalleled collection. Here, under the watchful gaze of the Muses, Callimachus found his true calling. Surrounded by the accumulated wisdom of centuries, he immersed himself in the works of his predecessors, engaging in spirited debates with fellow scholars, his mind sharp as a ship captain's astrolabe, navigating the vast sea of knowledge. To understand Callimachus's life in Alexandria, we must delve into the world of his patrons, the Ptolemies, the Macedonian dynasty that ruled Egypt following Alexander the Great's death. These weren't mere monarchs content with the trappings of power. They were patrons of the arts and sciences, keenly aware that their legitimacy rested not just on military might, but on their ability to foster a vibrant cultural scene. Ptolemy II Philadelphus, who reigned during Callimachus's early years in Alexandria, was particularly renowned for his intellectual curiosity. Under his rule, the Library of Alexandria flourished, its shelves groaning under the weight of scrolls imported from across the known world. It was Philadelphus who, driven by a desire to amass all knowledge under one roof, is said to have tasked his scribes with copying every single scroll that passed through Alexandria's bustling port. Callimachus, with his burgeoning reputation as a scholar and poet, soon caught the eye of the Ptolemaic court. It was an era when talented individuals, particularly those who could contribute to the dynasty's image as enlightened rulers, could find themselves elevated to positions of influence. While the exact nature of Callimachus's relationship with the Ptolemies remains a subject of scholarly debate, it's clear that he enjoyed their patronage, which afforded him the time and resources to pursue his literary pursuits. Imagine him, a frequent visitor to the royal court, engaging in witty banter with courtiers and fellow intellectuals, his verses gracing the ears of pharaohs and queens. This proximity to power, however, wasn't without its complexities. Navigating the often treacherous waters of courtly life required a deft touch, a keen awareness of unspoken rules and shifting alliances. In the shadow of the Library of Alexandria, Callimachus's prolific pen secured his legacy, not just a scholar but a creator. He wove words into epigrams, hymns, elegies, and sharp iambs. His Aetia explored the origins of myths, while Hecale, his miniature epic, celebrated everyday heroism. Even today, his work stands as a testament to innovation and literary brilliance. The details of Callimachus's final years are mostly lost, but we know he lived into old age, witnessing the reign of Ptolemy III Euergetes. His reputation as a literary giant endured, even as the court changed around him. Though the circumstances of his death are unclear, his influence on later poets like Catullus, Ovid, and Virgil is undeniable. Callimachus's legacy lives on, proof that true artistry lies in careful language and the courage to challenge tradition. In a world of sprawling epics, Callimachus mastered the epigram, short poems that captured deep emotion and sharp wit. His verses, whether on tombstones or statues, distilled complex ideas into a few perfect words. He embraced brevity, using it to leave a lasting impression across subjects from love to the nature of poetry itself. Through his epigrams, Callimachus's distinct voice, witty, ironic, and deeply human, shines through. Callimachus's hymns reveal his fascination with both myth and religious devotion. Unlike traditional hymns, his works blend epic, lyric, and humor, exploring the gods' stories with scholarly depth. His hymn to Apollo reflects on poetry and the Muses, while his hymn to Demeter captures raw maternal grief. These poems are both intellectually rich and emotionally resonant, elevating ritual into art. Callimachus's Aetia explores the origins of myths, rituals, and customs, offering readers a guide to Greek tradition. He digs beyond familiar tales, uncovering obscure legends and weaving them with his own insights. Though only fragments survive, the Aetia stands as a testament to the power of storytelling and the search for meaning. Through myth, Callimachus connects us to the beliefs and values of the ancient world. Callimachus's iambs reveal his playful, biting side, poems that critique rivals, mock the wealthy, and even poke fun at himself. With conversational tone and vivid imagery, he brings everyday experiences to life. His iambic poetry stands apart for its directness and willingness to challenge norms. Even in fragments, the iambs showcase his wit and fearless commentary. Callimachus proved that poetry could be both sharp and entertaining. In the Hecale, Callimachus reimagines the epic, focusing on a humble encounter between Theseus and an old woman. Instead of grand battles, the poem centers on kindness and human connection. Hecale's simple hospitality leaves a lasting impact on the hero and the reader. The Hecale reminds us that small acts can carry epic significance. Callimachus's innovation lies in finding the extraordinary within the ordinary. At the Library of Alexandria, Callimachus was more than a scholar. He was its organizing mind. Amidst a flood of new scrolls, he brought order and clarity, connecting past, present, and future knowledge. His dedication and precision made the library a true center of learning. For Callimachus, organizing knowledge was itself a creative act. Callimachus's Pinakes was a groundbreaking catalog of Greek literature at Alexandria. He classified works by genre, subject, and chronology, even providing author biographies and noting different editions. Though only fragments remain, the Pinakes set the standard for organizing knowledge. Callimachus understood that accessibility begins with order. His vision shaped how future generations approached scholarship. Beyond poetry, Callimachus's scholarship revealed his genius for finding connections across disciplines. His work on the Pinakes was both cataloging and literary criticism, mapping the evolution of Greek literature. He grouped authors by theme and context, guiding future scholars through the literary landscape. Callimachus embodied the Hellenistic polymath, embracing history, philosophy, mythology, and science. His legacy endures as a model of curiosity and intellectual breadth. The Library of Alexandria was more than scrolls. It was a living exchange of ideas. Callimachus, renowned scholar, knew knowledge grew brighter when shared. He embraced teaching, inspiring eager students and unlocking the mysteries of poetry and myth. Through lively debate and critical thinking, he fostered a collaborative pursuit of wisdom. Callimachus's legacy lives on, his passion for knowledge rippling through generations. The world of art, like the tides of the sea, is in constant flux, ebbing and flowing, responding to the shifting currents of its time. And within the realm of Hellenistic poetry, Callimachus emerged not just as a skilled craftsman of words, but as a revolutionary, a visionary who dared to challenge the very foundations of his craft, to rewrite the rules of engagement in the ongoing dialogue between poet and audience. Imagine, if you will, the literary landscape of Callimachus's day. The epic poems of Homer, those towering monuments to gods and heroes, still cast a long shadow, their verses etched into the very fabric of Greek culture. Yet something had shifted. The world, in the wake of Alexander the Great's conquests, felt vaster, more complex, more nuanced than those grand narratives could fully capture. Callimachus, ever the astute observer, sensed this shift in the artistic winds. He recognized that the old forms, while still powerful, needed to evolve, to adapt to the sensibilities of his time. He challenged the prevailing notion that bigger was always better, that literary merit was measured solely by the sheer length and grandeur of a work. His was a call for a return to craftsmanship, to a meticulous attention to detail, to the art of saying more with less. He believed that true artistry lay not in overwhelming the reader with a torrent of words, but in carefully selecting each phrase, each image, each metrical nuance, to create a work that was both intellectually stimulating and emotionally resonant. At the heart of Callimachus's artistic revolution lay a deceptively simple yet profoundly radical concept: brevity. He championed the slender muse, arguing that a poem's length should be dictated not by some arbitrary external standard, but by the inherent demands of its subject matter, by the poet's ability to sustain a high level of artistry and intellectual rigor within a chosen form. Imagine, if you will, Callimachus engaging in a lively debate with a fellow poet, maybe someone who favors the old ways, who believes that only epic poetry, with its sprawling narratives and larger-than-life characters, can truly be considered great art. Callimachus, with his characteristic wit and erudition, would likely counter that true artistry lies not in bombast but in restraint. He might draw an analogy to the sculptor, arguing that the creation of a miniature ivory figurine with its intricate details and delicate features requires as much, if not more, skill and artistry than the carving of a colossal marble statue. Both forms, he might argue, have their place, their own unique challenges and rewards. But to privilege one over the other based solely on scale would be to miss the point entirely. For Callimachus, the true measure of a poem lay in its ability to engage the reader's mind, to spark their imagination, to leave them with a sense of wonder and delight long after they had finished reading. And this, he believed, could be achieved more effectively through carefully crafted brevity than through sprawling, often repetitive narratives. Callimachus's artistic revolution wasn't simply a rejection of the past, it was a reimagining of what poetry could be, a bold exploration of untrodden paths within the vast and ever-evolving landscape of language. He understood that true originality stemmed not from a complete disregard for tradition, but from a deep and abiding engagement with it. Imagine him, amidst the stacks of the Library of Alexandria, his fingers tracing the faded ink of ancient scrolls, his mind absorbing centuries of literary tradition. He wasn't content to simply imitate his predecessors, he sought to understand their techniques, their innovations, their triumphs and failures, so that he might build upon their foundations to create something new and vital. He encouraged fellow poets to embrace erudition, to delve into the rich tapestry of Greek literature, to draw inspiration not just from the well-known epics and tragedies, but also from more obscure genres, from local myths and legends, from the fragments of lost works that whispered tantalizingly from the margins of history. But erudition, for Callimachus, wasn't simply a matter of displaying one's knowledge. It was a tool to be used creatively, to forge unexpected connections, to breathe new life into old forms. He delighted in juxtaposing different genres, in weaving together seemingly disparate threads of thought and tradition, creating a poetry that was both intellectually stimulating and aesthetically daring. Centuries have passed since Callimachus walked the sun-drenched streets of Alexandria, his mind ablaze with poetic innovation. The Library of Alexandria, that once great repository of knowledge, exists now only in fragments and memories, its scrolls lost to the ravages of time. Yet the legacy of Callimachus, the poet who dared to challenge the literary conventions of his day, continues to resonate, his influence rippling outward, shaping the course of Western literature. His ideas about brevity, about the importance of craftsmanship and artistic restraint, found fertile ground in the minds of Roman poets like Catullus, Horace, and Ovid, who saw in Callimachus a kindred spirit, a master craftsman who had found a way to breathe new life into ancient forms. Through their work, his influence spread, subtly shaping the literary landscape of the Roman world and, by extension, the Western literary tradition that followed. But the allure of Callimacheanism extends far beyond its historical impact. In a world saturated with information, with words and images bombarding us from every direction, his emphasis on brevity, on the power of carefully chosen words to cut through the noise and make a lasting impression, feels more relevant than ever. His championing of erudition, of engaging deeply with the vast tapestry of human knowledge, reminds us that true originality often stems not from a rejection of the past, but from a deep and abiding conversation with it. And his belief in the power of poetry to explore untrodden paths, to challenge conventional thinking, and to offer fresh perspectives on the world around us continues to inspire poets and artists working today. The Roman Empire, like all empires, eventually crumbled. Its grand monuments reduced to rubble, its once vast territories fragmented into a patchwork of competing kingdoms. Yet from the ashes of Rome, a new civilization arose, one that inherited not just the Romans' roads and aqueducts, but also their language, their laws, and their literature. And within this rich cultural inheritance, the influence of Callimachus, though often subtle and indirect, continued to make itself felt, like a subterranean stream resurfacing unexpectedly, its waters nourishing the roots of a new literary landscape. Imagine, if you will, the scholars and poets of the European Renaissance, rediscovering the classics after centuries of relative neglect, their minds ablaze with the possibilities of ancient Greek and Roman art and literature. They found in Callimachus not just a master craftsman of language, but a kindred spirit, a fellow traveler on the path of artistic innovation. His emphasis on brevity, his championing of erudition and originality, resonated deeply with a generation eager to break free from the perceived constraints of medieval scholasticism. The poets of the French Renaissance, for instance, particularly those associated with the Pléiades, a group of writers who sought to elevate the French language to the level of Greek and Latin, found inspiration in Callimachus's call for a return to classical models, for a poetry that was both elegant and intellectually rigorous. And later, during the English Renaissance, poets like Ben Jonson and John Donne, while not directly imitating Callimachus, clearly absorbed his lessons about wit, precision, and the power of allusion to create a poetry that was both erudite and emotionally resonant. The study of literary influence is like tracing a river, its path winding, merging, and resurfacing in unexpected places. So it is with Callimachus, whose subtle, enduring legacy weaves through Western literature. His artistry lies in restraint, in saying more with less, and in deep engagement with tradition. Callimachus inspires us to challenge boundaries and explore new paths in pursuit of artistic truth. His legacy reminds us that true artistry transcends time, and the power of words endures. And so, dear viewer, we reach the final chapter in our exploration of Callimachus, the poet-scholar of Alexandria, the man who dared to challenge the literary titans of his day, who championed the slender muse over the bombast of epic grandeur. As we turn the last page on his story, we find ourselves not at an ending but at a beginning. For the true measure of any artist's life lies not in the accolades they accrue or the monuments erected in their honor, but in the enduring resonance of their work, in the ripples of inspiration that radiate outward, touching hearts and minds across generations and cultures. Callimachus, for all his erudition, for all his meticulous craftsmanship and playful subversion of literary conventions, understood that true art, at its core, is about connection. It's about bridging the gap between the human and the divine, between the vast sweep of history and the intimate details of everyday life, between the world as it is and the world as it could be. He reminds us that within the seemingly insignificant, within the fragments of myth and the fleeting moments of beauty, lie universes waiting to be explored. He challenges us to reconsider our own assumptions about what constitutes great art, to look beyond the obvious, the grandiose, the overblown, and to find beauty and meaning in the subtle, the understated, the meticulously crafted. He reminds us that true originality often lies not in rejecting the past, but in engaging with it deeply, in absorbing its lessons, and then daring to forge our own path, our own unique voice, within the grand tapestry of human expression. Imagine a single grain of sand on the shores of Alexandria, bathed in golden light. Insignificant perhaps, yet within it lies a universe of complexity. Callimachus invites us to see the extraordinary in the ordinary, to find meaning in fragments and beauty in fleeting moments. The universe within a grain of sand. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.